Good evening to all the attendees and greetings for the day to the attendees who've signed on from out of India. It gives us great pleasure to welcome each one of you and our speaker for today, Rhucha Vartak, who is an independent information security consultant to the 64th Analytics Wednesday webinar episode. It's a very interesting topic. We've not had this topic before. It's on the use of data analytics in IT concurrent audit at banks and financial institutions. Friends, this webinar series is brought to you by SAMA Audit Systems and Softwares Private Limited, and we are supported by the Government of Canada Trade Commissioner's Service. As all of you know, SAMA has for over 24 years been at the forefront of cutting-edge technologies, solutions, engagements, knowledge transformation programs on data analytics. We have Caseware Idea, on continuous monitoring ALISA, on SAP data, smart data mining from SAP using Smart Exporter, financial working paper tools in the form of Caseware working papers, and legal compliance management, Lex Comply solution. So we have the entire suite and bouquet of tools and solutions and products. With that introduction about the company, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Rhucha. And I'm very fortunate because I've had a chance to work with Rhucha personally on a number of data analytic projects, both train her team and her when she was leading the engagements in her early assignment, and also learn from her. So it's been a wonderful journey. And I regard her as an incumbent professional, very sincere, very proficient and diligent. So we are very lucky to have her today. Let me introduce her. So as I mentioned, she's an independent information security consultant, and she's got a rich experience of more than 15 years. She was leading a team of IT security professionals in a leading professional services firm in her past engagement. By academic, she's an engineer in computer technology and a graduate in physics. She's also a certified information systems auditor, an ISO 27001 lead auditor, a certified ethical hacker. She holds a General Data Protection Regulation Foundation Application and Substance Certificate from EU GDPR Institute, Denmark. And she's also completed a diploma in cyber law, which is conducted by the Government Law College in Bombay and the Asian School of Cyber Laws. She's worked with a leading Indian chartered accountant firm for 14 years, leading the IT risk and advisory practice for 6 years. Prior to that, she was a partner in a company catering to bespoke small and medium scale industries in software development and training. She's also been associated with colleges as a visiting faculty in the area of computer technology and programming. So that's going to be a wonderful combination today in the webinar. IT being very pervasive, she has worked in major industries like banking, financial services, IT, ITES, manufacturing, pharma, hospitality, and healthcare, and has conducted more than 100 plus systems audits in various fields like IT security, ITGC reviews, SOX testing, SOC1 and SOC2 reporting, IT infrastructure reviews, data center and disaster recovery site reviews, BCP, vendor audits, data migration audits. And she's also got extensive experience in SAP and Oracle configuration across business cycles. She has provided advisory services on GDPR and formulated IT security policies, which are compliant with ISO 27001. And very important, she's been leading data analytics initiatives in a previous organization and also instrumental providing inputs on ERP and DMS product evaluations. So I'm sorry I took time. Rhucha, we are very, very fortunate and thankful to have you. Over to you, Rhucha, with your webinar and session. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your kind words. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much. And a warm welcome to everyone. Good evening. It is my absolute pleasure and privilege to speak on this forum. Frankly speaking, it took some time for me to search for a relevant topic because this being the 64th episode of Analytics Wednesday, I was thinking that I will speak on a topic which may not be covered in so much of details earlier. And also so many industry stalwarts have already contributed. So it's a big responsibility on me. I hope my today's session helps me taking this baton ahead. So without much delay, let us now begin this webinar. I'm just putting up my presentation. Just let me know once it is visible.
Sure.
I hope it is visible now.
Not yet, Rhucha.
Okay, let me try once again.
Sure. Would you like me to reclaim host and give? Yeah. Now we can see. Yes, we can see your screen, and your presentation is visible. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. The today's topic is using data analytics in IT concurrent audits at banks. So I'm just beginning with what you will find inside is basically the background of IT concurrent audits at banks, generic scope that is there for IT concurrent audit, challenges in conducting IT concurrent audit and need for data analytics. Rather, I should say that the solution is data analytics. And then how do we apply data analytics in IT concurrent audits, various areas. While I've chosen few over here for a detailed discussion, there could be many more areas as well. So I have chosen IT asset management, access management, patch management, antivirus, and privileged user activity. These are the areas that I have chosen, which will be followed by a session on question and answer. If for some reason, if I'm not able to answer your questions right away, I will share my email ID so that you can touch base with me later on, and I'll try my level best to satisfy all your queries. The background of IT concurrent audit at banks. The Reserve Bank of India has mandated the concurrent audit to all scheduled commercial banks. There are two circulars in this regard. One is September 2019 and the other one is 2015. And it talks about the bank should follow a risk-based approach while choosing the areas of concurrent audit. Now, IT is considered as one of the critical areas because of the complexity and the impact. So generally, IT concurrent audit is also conducted as a part of concurrent audit activity. There is one more circular or a directive from RBI with the title of the strengthening and implementation and strengthening of SWIFT-related operational controls. This mentions that monitoring of privileged user activity. It says that the system or application of bank having financial implications such as CBS, Treasury, SWIFT shall not have any operational roles and responsibility defined. So the users who are IT administrative users who can create the user ID, who can create or modify the roles and privileges, who can assign the users, who can deactivate the users, should not be having any operational rights. And on the other hand, the operational users, the privileged operational users who can configure the systems, who can pass the transactions, payment confirmation messages and all that, they should not be able to do the modification to the roles privileges. They cannot create the user IDs or delete the user IDs. So basically, it is a segregation of user ID. Now, the people may say that when the application itself is a role-based access system, why there is such a need to monitor the access? Because if the user itself is not given that access, how it can actually perform these activities? Why there is a need to do that? The answer is that because of the connectivity between the system, among the business partners, exposure to internet, there is a possibility that the perpetrator may be there and there is a escalation in the access rights, and then they may perform certain things. So in spite of the following the least privileges, segregation of duties while assessing the access, providing the access, in spite of having the user access review at the periodic intervals, it is expected that the each and every activity of these people are monitored and reviewed on a daily basis. So that's the importance that is given to this, right? So these are the three circulars that are the foundation to the IT concurrent audits. As you may be knowing that the concurrent audits aims at shortening the interval between any transaction and its independent monitoring or review. Therefore, it is required for the establishment of sound internal controls framework, and it is regarded as an early warning system. It ensures that a timely detection of serious errors and irregularities. And it also promotes a preventive vigilance to the banks. The scope of the work to be entrusted to concurrent auditors is left to the discretion of head of internal audit of the bank. The only condition is that they should ensure that the risk sensitive areas are covered under concurrent audit. Now, in a typical bank, if you may be knowing, the number of applications ranges anywhere from 100 to 500. And these applications will be having connections, interfaces amongst themselves to the outside world, business partners. There are different channels using which the customers also interact with the systems, apart from, of course, hackers, because banking sector or where the money lies, it is always on the radar of the perpetrators. So because of that, there is a complexity. Now, it just may not be possible to audit all the applications in the bank. So generally, there is a categorization depending upon the criticality, like grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, or maybe you can call it as gold application, gold set of applications, silver and bronze, something like that. And generally, the critical most are considered for IT concurrent audit. And for these applications, the IT general controls review is generally included as a part of the scope. Apart from that, because it is mandated, the privileged user activity for the systems which are having financial transactions in it, that is CBS, SWIFT, or treasury applications, they are also generally included in this. Now, the bank's IT landscape, as I mentioned to you, it is very complex because of large number of applications, their interfaces within and outside the bank. Different technology stacks are also used. This particular sector is highly regulated and it has got a huge financial impact. Hence, although the ITGC controls are to be tested, different auditing techniques needs to be used when you are conducting the IT concurrent audit, than which are used in carrying out the system audit of the same area. Now, let me explain you the differences over here. In IT concurrent audit, you have to analyze 100% of data as against the sampling that is done in systems audit. Now, when you are auditing the concurrent audit, then the servers from all the environment. What I mean by that is the production environment, DR environment, disaster recovery, DMZ, pre-prod, UAT, all these environments are considered. Whereas when you are doing a systems audit, generally only the production and DR setup is considered for that. Third point is that the data over a period of time needs to be analyzed for trends and outliers. As I said, that in the system audit, it is a sample-based audit, and generally you don't find out the trend. You don't go by that. But in concurrent audit, you are supposed to find out the trend. The fourth point is that the time limit. The report needs to be submitted on a monthly basis. So that gives a very small window of time to collect and analyze the data. Like, for example, suppose for a given month, if you get the data, let's say in first 10 days, then it takes another 7-8 days to analyze the data, and then another 4-5 days to discuss the observations and the queries to resolve that, then prepare a draft report, again discuss that, and then prepare the final report. By the time you are actually releasing the final report, the next cycle starts. So you get a very less or a smaller time window to complete the audit. And the last thing which fascinates me rather, that you need to look at the data from various angles, rather as many angles as possible. I remember a small toy when we were small, we used to play with a kaleidoscope. And what happens in a kaleidoscope? You have a broken pieces of glass bangles, and the moment you rotate the kaleidoscope, you see a completely different design. Same is the case with the data that you have. You just change the way of looking at it, change the angle of looking at it, and you will see something different. So that will help you to come up with the diverse observations, which are not very routine. And for that, you need out-of-the-box thinking. I don't mean to say that in systems audit, you don't need that, but it is always needs to be complemented to the logical thinking. And data analytics helps you in doing so. Now, when towards the end of the session, I'll be showcasing some Excel sheets with a test data or a sample data, and that will help you to understand this point even more better. Now, because of these challenges, like you have to analyze 100% of data, time window is small, trend analysis needs to be done, and various aspects of data needs to be understood. When I say that you need to analyze the data, it is not that every time you will get some observation, but it definitely helps you to understand the data Once you understand the data, then the next step is to find out any outlier or any deviations that are there. So it helps either way. The systems may be compliant, systems may not be compliant, but the main thing is that you need to understand the data, and data analytics helps you in doing so. Now, because of this challenges, that you need to use actually some tool, maybe Excel or a tool which is like IDEA, which is very convenient and very efficient in doing that. And to the extent possible, automate the audit steps. So that will really be helpful in conducting the IT concurrent audit in an effective and efficient manner. Now, in this diagram, I'm just trying to explain you that how the domains of IT general controls are connected with each other. Just give me a second. Yeah. And then you will understand what do I mean by looking at the data from various angles and then coming up with different perspectives. So imagine that you are introducing a new server or a new IT asset into your landscape. Then generally the CMDB tool or IT asset inventory tool is used for that because of the number of assets that the bank has. It ranges in the about say few thousands. And here it is getting saved. The data about that particular machine is getting saved. Like it will have all the configurations stored over there. Moment that particular asset is introduced, it will also be having a antivirus install on that. It should also have a patching done on a proper timelines or whatever patching cycle the company is following. The mapping of that particular asset will also go to capacity so that the capacity can be monitored. It will also get affected, reflected in the physical and environmental controls. That is the network diagram, the RAG diagram, it will be there. Then the access management, which is again, very, very important aspect of the information security. There is a tool that is used for that is a privileged access management tool. This is like specially for the privileged users or the administrators. Apart from that, of course, there are other users and other controls for the normal business users. These days, log management has become again a big thing, and tools like SIM tools are used for that. So the mapping of that particular asset has also to go to SIM tool. Now, once that particular asset is decommissioned, it can be a virtual asset, it can be a physical asset. Then if you can see this dotted red lines over here, the same thing will happen. You have to decommission it from the patching server, from the antivirus server, from the PAM server, SIEM. You have to update your network diagram, RAG diagram. You have to update your capacity tool as well. So because of this, the complexity increases. This technique, we do use it in systems audit as well, but this is more prevalent in concurrent audit because you have to do it month on month, and month on month you have to check that whatever inventory is maintained, it is uniform, consistent across the bank. The advantages of that and the pointers for the audit I'll be discussing in the subsequent slides. Apart from that, here I have mentioned about the privileged user access review, which is for the applications which are of financial importance or which has got the impact. And generally the banks have a practice that they have a data warehouse, and entire means each and every activity, each and every transaction actually moves to the data warehouse application. And from there, certain rules which are based on the circular that I have just mentioned in the beginning of my session, those rules are set and those queries are actually utilized to take the data. Now, on that data, which is a raw data, we do the further analysis. So this is the, I can say, this is the landscape of IT controls that you are actually supposed to check as a part of your IT concurrent audit. Now, how do we apply different data analytics techniques to this IT concurrent audit? So the formula that I'm using, basically, I'm using MS Excel at this moment, but definitely a tool like IDEA will be of much helpful. I'll be talking about that also. Very extensively, we look up pivot table, then graphs, functions like max, macros, filters, sort, groups and subtotals, removing the duplicates, use of if condition, concatenate. So these are the various techniques that you have to use. Now, what happens is basically when you use these techniques, Excel is of course excellent. There is no doubt about that. But with extensive use of VLOOKUP, what happens is your working file tends to become heavy and inefficient. I mean, many a times it happens that the file, the system hangs, or the file doesn't open. It is very difficult to store that file. Then what do? You remove the formulae. I mean, once it is done, you can remove the formula and paste the values. But with that, you will lose the audit trail. And then what are the analytical steps that you have followed? You will lose that. So it is not advisable to do that and then remove the formula in that. Second thing is that in MS Excel, joins are not so easy to do. I will not say it is impossible, but it is not easy. Generally, that is the advantage of using a database or an application like IDEA, wherein joining becomes very easy. So one-to-many, many-to-one kind of relationships can be found out. With VLOOKUP, generally it matches with the first occurrence of the match, and then you are not able to find out the rest of the matches so easily. Right. The third thing is that if the raw files are not stored properly, then you will lose all the evidences. So with Excel, what happens is people keep on making the copies of that. And because it is month on month, you get similar kind of data. There are chances that you get lost in that ocean. And hence it is very, very important that you have a method in doing this analytics, or you go for a tool such as Caseware IDEA. So these are the techniques that I'll be using, and I'll be showcasing that using a sample Excel file. Now in this section, I'm talking about what kind of analysis we are going to do and what is the conclusion that we can find out from that. Now, it is not necessary, as I mentioned, that every time you will find an observation. Many a times the things are compliant, but the basic principle of auditing is trust but verify. So every time you have to do this, although the data sets are of the similar nature. Now, when it comes to asset management, the first analysis that you do is basically comparison of server inventory, because it is the most critical inventory. And since our entire audit is application focused, the applications are generally residing on servers. The application server, there is a database server, and in some cases, there is a web server as well. And there are multiple servers like that. So what you're doing is first is the comparison of server inventory month on month. Now you will say that this is so obvious. I mean, is it going to change every month? Yes, it does change. So you have to find out that how the assets are getting added, whether they are getting removed, or whether there is some typo error in maintaining the inventory. Now this includes the comparison of application at the IP level. So it starts with the IP level, IP address as it is called as, and that maybe you can call it as a primary key. But once the primary key matches, then the other details, such as what is the name of the application, what is the environment, that is, it is production, it is UAT, it is DR, what it is. Many a times the location also, if it is the on-premises hosted, then what is the location of that particular server? What is the operating system that is used for that? What is the database server that is used for that? And what is the status? That means whether it is active, decommissioned, or discarded. So month on month, when you do that, then you are able to find out the discrepancies in the number of servers. What I mean by that is, for a given application, for a given environment, for a given month, you have got, let us say, 5 number of servers in the production environment. And in the next month, if it changes, and if it doesn't have any adequate evidence to showcase that in the capacity monitoring or in the physical and environmental, it was a commissioning report that was there, then there is a discrepancy in maintaining that. And as I mentioned to you in the earlier slide, that because of the interdependencies of the various domains, if you miss out a particular entry in the asset inventory itself, then there are chances that maybe the patching server is not aware about that, maybe antivirus is not implemented on that, maybe it is not mapped to PAM, or maybe it is not having any entry of logs into SIM tool. So these kind of discrepancies can be found out when you compare the data month over month. Now, same kind of analysis can be done for end user machines as well, but for this session, I'm restricting myself only to the servers. The second comparison is that after you are done with the comparison within the domain, that is the data which is for asset management for a month, first month, second month, third month, and so on. Now what you are doing is you are actually comparing the data across the domains. So you're getting some data from asset inventory, that is CMDB tool. You are getting some data from your antivirus tool. You are getting some data from your PAM tool. You are getting some data from your SIEM tool. So you are comparing now amongst the domain and again trying to find out whether there is any discrepancy in the number of IPs, the count of IPs, the applications itself. Like there is a possibility that suppose a particular application that is sunsetted or suppose a new application is introduced and still it is not appearing in a particular inventory, then that becomes a concern. I just want to reiterate that it is not that always you find the observation, but it is a duty of an IT concurrent auditor to check every time that the data is consistent within the domain over a period of time and across the domains as well, right? The third one is you're comparing the environments. Like as I've said, like you, for a given application, you find out how many servers are there in a given environment, that is production, DR, your DRDMZ or UAT, and then you try to find out that the other controls, which are like, for example, patching control, wherein it is expected that the patching should be done in the lower environment first, or if it is a critical application, then there has to be a UAT for that, or there has to be a DR setup which is equivalent to that. So those type of comparisons or those type of analysis can be done in this. And another thing is that you basically, when you do the analytics on the count of operating system specifications or a database for that matter, it helps you in optimizing the licenses or remaining compliant with the licensing requirements as well. Because as you are aware that the software licenses is a huge cost. And with that, you can always compare and you can optimize this use of licenses. So these are the 4 or 5 areas that I thought I will showcase to you in my Excel afterwards. But these are the areas that you generally look out for. Apart from that, of course, the other things that you do as a part of your routine IT concurrent audit that you will do. But these are the areas where I'm using data analytics. So I'm not saying that this is the only things that you do in IT concurrent audit. There are other areas as well. Other controls are also checked. But in that, I may not be using the data analytics techniques. Hence, these are the specific pointers I have mentioned wherein data analytics needs to be done. The next area is access management. As against, I have said earlier that the comparison of data which is related to the management of privileged users in applications, in OS layer, the database layer, the network devices. So whenever a user ID is created by following a proper procedure that is mentioned in the IT policy procedures, what happens is generally a ticket is raised and the user ID is created against that particular ticket. And in that ticketing tool, you are able to find out the approvals also. So as a part of our IT concurrent audit, you check that. Now, this particular control is where you are actually not using a data analytics techniques, but what you do is basically when you pull out the data from a particular database and from the ticketing system, and then you are able to match that. If a particular user is created without having a ticket, then you can raise that as a query and then find out whether the ticket was missed or whether it was a perpetrator who created that. Or sometimes it may happen that during, let us say, a disaster recovery drill, there are chances that sometimes on an ad hoc basis, you need to create a user and people generally, they may forget to regularize that or delete that afterwards. So such users which are having administrative privilege are definitely a concern. So comparison of data which is related to the privileged users from the PAM tool and from the ticketing tool that you can compare. And also you can compare it with SIM tool. That means each and every activity that is done by this user should get actually recorded in the log system, log management system as well. So that you can, if it is something that is not consistent with the behavior, the SIM tool can throw the alerts to the independent team of CISO or the security department, ISG group or somebody, then they can investigate it further. So this helps in doing the early analysis or early detection of any user that is created or deactivated. I mean, if you have seen few of the frauds in the past, which have occurred in various banks in India and across the world, you will find that a user is basically created with a ransomware or some piece of malware. A user is created because that is the way you reach the business data, right? So the user is basically the center of all the activities, and hence whichever user is created in the system, it should be having the least privileges. It should have follow the principle of segregation of duties. When it is getting created, it should have a proper approval mechanism in place, and its activity should be monitored all the time. So this particular analysis can be done using the data analytics techniques. The second comparison, as I said, which we did it in asset management also. On the similar line, you can do it here as well to find out what is the data that is related to privileged users on operating system, databases, network devices in the current month and in the previous month. So maybe how many times they changed the password or how many times a user was created. So that kind of trend analysis can be done. And secondly, this also helps in closing the open observations. Now here, that's a big task in itself. I'll give you an example for a particular area. Let us say that in access management or in asset management or in patch management, you find that there are X number of servers, let us say 50 number of servers, which were not patched in a timely manner. And that was the observation that you raised. Typically in the systems audit, what you do is you do the follow-up audit, and then that's the end of the story. Here, what happens is in every subsequent cycle of your concurrent audit, you have to check all those 50 from, let's say, from first month, then whatever number is coming in the second month, and then in the third month, and then in the fourth month, just to see that whatever was the observation, that all those IPs in that particular month are actually remediated. So it is like that granular level is expected. You just cannot say that, okay, X number was there and now all are remediated. No, you need to find out, you need to analyze that, you need to have that evidence with you that each and every IP that you had pointed out as an outlier or for the observation is actually closed. So this kind of VLOOKUP again helps you in closing the open observations at a granular level. Then the statistical analysis you can do for finding out what kind of activities these users are doing. So whether they access the particular service for authorized activity, for example, enabling some port or setting up some rule, and whether there was a corresponding ticket in that ticketing system, whether it is approved or not. So that kind of data can be checked in this. And last but not the least, you have to compare the data with the HR data, because many a times you find that the user ID is deactivated. Agreed. When a employee he leaves the company, leaves the organization, you deactivate. But what is the time that is lapsed? And this is especially so for the privileged users, so that there is a good control on that. If your policy says that it should be deactivated within 24 hours, then you can compare the data that you are getting it from your HR. What was the last working day as per your HR data, and when was it actually deactivated into individual systems or PAM, here in this case, privileged access management tool. So these are the activities, these are the data analytics that you can do in case of access management. I'm moving on to the next area, which is patching. Now, patching is a moving target, I should say, and the most difficult area of IT management. Very, very difficult because of the size and the complexity, and because of various channels. People want all the application on all the time. Can you you can imagine the level of frustration if some server is not working and then users are not able to do their own transactions. We must have experienced that when we are doing the internet banking, and like that, there are so many number of applications that are there, and all the users, including the internal users, external users, the your associates, they want the system on all the time. But when it comes to patching, you need a downtime, and getting that downtime is always a challenge. And there is a turnaround time that is allocated. So it doesn't happen that whenever a patch comes, this is more common in case of Windows related applications, operating systems than Linux. Linux also you get the patches, but not so often as the Microsoft Windows. So you have a turnaround time or a TAT that is defined. The patches that come, they are based on the vulnerabilities that are disclosed or discovered in the previous month cycle. And then they come up with the patch, which is a critical, or it can be important, or it can be moderate, or of a smaller importance. Depending upon that, generally the banks have a practice to have a turnaround time of, let's say, 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, or 90 days, because there are other compensating controls also. Now imagine that the patching team has to patch all the servers, not only the critical ones or not only the production ones. They have to patch all the servers, right? So there is a huge amount of work that is required, and this is always an area of challenge in any of the banks or any of the organization for that matter. What you can compare over here is generally you get a list of the patches that are released for a given month, given cycle, and you also get the categorization of that. Depending upon that, you will find out how many days are actually allowed as per the policy of the bank. When you get that date difference, and then when you compare it with the actual date of patching and which patch was actually applied. Patching is done, but which patch was applied, that is also very important to see, right? Because the patches keep on coming. So when was the last patch applied and what was the number of that patch? Both the elements are equally important. And when you compare that with your master list, you are able to find out that which are the systems that are not patched in a given cycle. This is the first analysis you do. Then the second analysis, again, as I mentioned earlier, the month on month, you compare that data so that you are able to close the open observations from the previous cycle at a granular level. What I mean by granular level is server by server. You are able to do that at that level. It is not at a gross level. It is at a server of server. Third thing is that many a times some banks, they have a policy, and because of some business reasons, they take exception for a particular cycle. So maybe let's just say that during the month of March, they do not want to patch the system, a particular set of systems. So for that, they will take a deviation, an exception for that. And now these deviations cannot be for long period of time. So therefore, they're given only for a limited period of time. And then how do we track that? So again, the analytics will help you doing that. You know that which application is having that exception, which environment is having that exception, when was the exception given, and till what period it is given. Moment that period is over, then your Excel or whatever analytical tool that you are using, it will flash you that, okay, these are the IPs, you need to go and check it again. And then you can find out that if the period of exception is over now, what is the status of the patching system for that. Also, as a part of IT concurrent audit, you do find out what is the compensating control if the systems are not patched, but they don't come under the data analytics part of that. They are the part of our regular checking as such. The next point is that you try to find out how the systems are patched in different environments. Now, all the system needs to be patched, but which one should be patched first? So patch should be always tested in a test environment first. Generally, they call it as a lower environment. So you test it in, let's say, in a UAT environment, then you go to pre-prod, and then you go to the DR, and then you actually do the production patching. So maybe you want to find out that whether the patches were tested in the lower environments or not. Data analytics will come handy to you. So these are few of the areas in case of patch management that you can do the analytics. Coming to the antivirus server, now maybe you will find it as repetitive, but of course the data will be pretty different in each of the cases. Here again, the antivirus signature, which is typically called as a DAT, that needs to be updated every month or as and when it is available. You can compare it, the availability of that and updating of that DAT on the servers in a timely manner. Now, this is generally done in an automatic manner, but because of some technical glitches, it is possible that the endpoint machines or the servers are also not able to talk to the antivirus server itself. Maybe it was for some reason it was disconnected or it was powered off. There could be so many reasons. And after that, if it is not updated with antivirus, then again, that becomes a concern. So it is important that you check the data for that particular month, also month on month. Here also you can have a count of IPs on which you have installed the antivirus solution, because that will help you in becoming compliant with the licensing requirements. And you can save on some money also if you're using those licenses appropriately. Apart from that, across all the domains, you have to make sure that whatever number of applications are given to you, maybe 30, 40, 50, whatever number, all those applications are present in the data that is given to you. And there is no duplication of any IP address. So you may find this very, very obvious, but as I mentioned to you earlier, we need to verify every time that all these applications are covered in the areas that you are auditing in your IT concurrent audit. In case of privileged user activity, the bottom line is that the segregation of duties need to be there. I mean, our logic that the role-based access is there, the access is granted using appropriate approvals and all that. We are going to keep it aside for some time. And what we are going to do is, for the identified systems which are having financial impact, you are pulling out all the data. Okay. If each and every transaction that is done by this bunch of IT privileged users and business privileged users, and then you're comparing it for various conditions that whatever they're doing, is it as per the requirement and as per the rules that are mentioned in the document that is prepared based on the circular. So for example, suppose for a given transaction, it is expected that there should be a maker and checker. Now, if you find a particular transaction where there is no checker and there is some amount, I mean, the amount is not zero or it is not only a view kind of activity, then you can raise it as a query and find out that what is the reason that why the checker field is not captured. Maybe the logs are not configured properly. Maybe somebody has bypassed that. Or maybe the access is given in such a way that maker and checker, both kind of accesses are given to the same person. Now, this another thing is the analysis of events. For example, how many users are created, how many users are deleted, how many are deactivated, how many times a password was changed. I mean, you can just go back and check on the internet how the frauds were done on Swift system, and then you will understand the importance of IT concurrent audit of privileged user activity. That the users who are actually genuine users, they are there. But apart from that, because of some malware or some attack, if a new user is created and if it is not known to the organization, then it's a big thing. So although other controls are in place, the user activity review has to be conducted. And the last rule that is there is to identify the segregation of duties breaches, if any. So these are a few of the areas I thought we should be utilizing the techniques of data analytics to make this audit even more efficient. What I will be doing now is showcasing the Excel that I have prepared. It is basically having only a sample data and only few lines of data which I have created, but I thought it will really help you to understand the things that I have mentioned in my slides in a better manner. Just give me a minute to switch.
Yes, Rhucha, it is visible.
It is visible, right? So this is a small set of data. Just keep it in mind that in the banks, the data is never so small. It generally has got about 20, 25 columns and maybe few thousand of rows. So for the sake of explaining it in a given time that is possible, I thought I'll just talk about the IP addresses over here. What is the name of the application? I have taken just one example, and this I'm talking about the assets. The operating system definition is mentioned over here. Which environment it is mentioned over here, and what is the database? Now, when you do your own analysis and your own research, you know that the Windows 2008 server is no more supported by Microsoft, or Oracle 11.2 is no more supported by the Oracle organization as such. So when you have that list of the master list ready with you, you can always have a VLOOKUP and find out that whether any such platform is there, which is actually not going to get supported by the OEM, end of life, end of support, as we typically call it. And although many a times they give you a time, okay, it's not like overnight they declare it. So you have to have that early warning. Suppose if a particular application or a particular, let's say, database is going to get out of service in July, then you should actually be tracking it right from January, because you can imagine data migration is not a small thing. You have to don't have to copy the data, but the data should work afterwards. So these kind of things will help you. These kind of VLOOKUPs will help you to sound the teams. I'm sure these teams are definitely on the radar. They are always checking for it, but we can always suggest them that, are you aware that, okay, this thing is there in your IT environment, and this needs to be replaced. Because what happens is, once the operating system or a database goes out of support, out of or end of life, the original equipment manufacturer, that is OEM, they will not be releasing the security patches for that. And the securities or the vulnerabilities that are there, they are known to the world. So the perpetrator may make use of that. So to avoid that pitfall, you have to make sure that you have a master list prepared well in advance, and then you are having a VLOOKUP with your data, and to point out that there are few out of end of life, end of support systems that are there, and talk to the relevant teams and then sort it out. So this is the first analysis that we have done over here. And if you are able to read the columns from H to K, what I'm trying to do over here is just trying to find out the discrepancy. Like, for example, in the previous month, let us say this particular server, which is having the IP of x.x3.x4.113, I have given just some random number I have given, which was actually having Windows as a server, but now it is having Linux. So is it a typo error, or was there some discrepancy? You need to find it out. And depending upon that, maybe it can become an observation, or maybe it will get resolved at a documentation level itself. Apart from that, you can also have a VLOOKUP with a decommissioned data, so that you can rule out all those IPs from your analysis. And here you find a small table that for an application number XY, application name XYZ, in a given month of, let's say, October 21, I was having 4 number of machines or IPs in production. In December also it is 4. In DR it was 2, and now it is 1. And in UAT it was 3 and 3. So they have removed 1 machine from DR. What is the reason for that? Because it's a critical application, and generally the DR are the capacity at DR is actually there is some thought process that goes when you do that. So this may become a query, and as I said, like, if you are able to find out the appropriate explanation for that, well and good. If not, then this will become an observation. So we will never jump at a conclusion, but definitely when you look at the data, you get many more queries, and then if you get satisfied answers, then it is okay. Otherwise, you can mention it as an observation. Next that I'm trying to explain is the patch management data. So in column B, C, D, and E, VCDLE over here. As you can see, I have listed out few IPs, then the application name, the environment, and the last patching date. Apart from this patching date, what is also important is what is the number of patch, that which patch was actually implemented. And you can have a separate table. As I've mentioned to you, there is a master list which is available on the internet also. Depending upon the criticality, it is either 30 days stat, 45 days stat, 60 or 90 days stat. You can compare the date difference, you can take it and then find out that which of the machines were not patched. And again, second level is important to find out which number of patches actually not patched. Then other things like whether the exception was taken, whether decommissioning was done, that is a part of the rest of the audit procedures. Apart from that, in column number G, H, I, J, and K, you will find that the same data that is there in B, C, D, and E, I have done a pivot table over here. And what I have done is basically the environments are there in the column, the application names are there in the rows, and what you get is something like this. And you see that for that application, the DR server is not there. Now, this is very, difficult to believe, because if the applications are critical, of course, this analysis, you can do it on the entire set of data also, but it is very unlikely that for the production environment is there, but there is no DR. So you can always find out what is the reason why you have not provided for that DR over there. Similarly, you will find it here that for application named B, there is no UAT. How are you testing it then? I mean, that's a big thing, right? So you when you just do a small pivot table over here, you can find out 2 or 3 queries at least at a query level, you will get that. And apart from that, once you know that, okay, this is the number of DR server is 1, then in production 2, then in UAT 2 for a given month, you can compare it month on month for the other comparisons, as I mentioned earlier. Now here, what you're doing is basically, I'll just put a filter over here for application A, so that I'm able to explain it in a better manner. So what I'm doing here is basically for this application, there are different environments over here. Production is there, UAT is there, DR is there, and what is the last patching date? Now you find that for the patching date is 14th of April, whereas for DR it is previous to that, or for other production server it is prior to that. So you can raise it as a query. I have used functions like sort, filter, maximum. So what you're checking here is what is the number of that particular patch which is actually applied on the production server directly. That means it is not tested, which is against the policy and procedure of the bank. Generally, it is expected that first it is tested in the UAT environment, and then it is then deployed on the production environment. It doesn't happen that it is directly deployed. There is a risk, because what happens is while you are trying to plug one vulnerability, there is a possibility that it opens up some other issue. Certain things may not work properly. So with this kind of analysis, you are able to find out that whether the testing was done or not done. Now, this is the data. When I say you can compare it month on month basis, I have used the functions like VLOOKUP, COUNTIF, COUNT-A, and the conditional formatting over here. And this, whatever I have done it for antivirus, this can be done for assets, capacity, access management, patch management as well. Now, what I'm doing over here is basically I'm just tabulating the observations from various cycles, right? So as you can see over here is, this is July 21 data, June 21 data, then July, then August, and then what happens is when you create it for, let's say, for 1 year, and then the current month you just paste it over here with various types of VLOOKUPs that you have put. What you do is either you get that data, get that IP, or you don't get that. Okay, like here, as you can see it here, right? So if you find a particular IP in the current month as well, that means that particular IP was not patched, or that was not having an updated Otherwise, it wouldn't have come, because you're comparing the observations. So it really helps in closing the open observation in a granular manner. This is what I mean by that. Because suppose if you have, I think these are some 11 IPs were there that were not having updated TAT on that. That is nothing but a antivirus signatures or virus signatures rather. Out of that, in the current month, that is in the month of April, after almost 10 months, again, this particular IP and this x.x.x.1 is appearing again. Why? Because these are the critical servers that we are talking about. Same analysis can be done for the user machines as well, which can range in maybe 25, 30,000 of users, or maybe 1 lakh users also if you are going to the bigger banks. The number of servers also sometimes goes 5,000, 6,000, 10,000, 20,000 also. So the same analysis will really help you to close the observation at a granular level. This is what I mean by that. That moment you paste your data towards your extreme right-hand side, and you have all the formulas written for VLOOKUPs, it will just showcase you that which are the IPs that are not closed. And you have also done a conditional formatting over here so that you are able to visually also you are able to find it out. And here I have used a count function so that you can find out that how many IPs are still not patched. Okay, so you get this kind of analysis. And this is what I was mentioning earlier, that as the number of VLOOKUPs increases, the file becomes so heavy that it is not efficient. Many times it just closes or the system hangs. And then when you remove the VLOOKUP, as you can see over here in the address bar over here, then you lose the audit trail. Now, how will you know that what was the function that was used? Whether I have typed this #n/a or whether it was a result of VLOOKUP. You don't know that. So that's not a right thing. So at a right point in time, one should shift to the analytical tools like IDEA, because all these things can be preserved. All these audit steps can be preserved over there. So this is just one example that I have given over here. You can do the that same count as you can see it in row number 4 over here. You can have the visual also for that, right? So this is the analysis that you can. Just a minute, let me just. Here again, this is a different kind of analysis. I have used the concatenate function, sort, count, pivot, and VLOOKUP. I have put a VLOOKUP against the decommissioned data. I can find out the aging from here, like for x.x.x.1, the August, in August and also in July. So maybe it has taken a little longer time to do the antivirus updation. Which is not actually correct. The antivirus signature should get updated at the earliest. So the aging can be found out. The licensing can be done from this. Whether any duplicate IPs are there, whether all the applications are covered or not. That kind of analysis can be done over here. So this is another area that I wanted to show. For access, I have not plotted anything, but again, I've used the data which you will get it in PAM or in SIM. You can use the VLOOKUP. For HR list, you can use the VLOOKUP again. And for the username, last login data from the system, and the HR last working day, the date difference function will help you to do that. With that, I'm coming to the last tab, which is the privileged user activity. Again, I do not have a lot of data for this because of the confidentiality reasons, but various types of analysis that can be done is maker checker same, no checker, what is the time of activity, whether it is not in the working hours or working days of the bank, number of times the passwords were changed, the activities which are actually not are restricted or prohibited, whether those are conducted or not. We look up with the master user list and the segregation of duties. So with this, we come to the end of this presentation. And I think Jairam, we can have the question and answers if the time permits, or
Sure. Thanks, Rhucha. I think it was a very engaging, insightful presentation. Thank you for both the use cases which you presented in the slides, and also showed us how to do it in a data analytic tool, because as you very rightly mentioned, Excel is the most popular data analytic tool, and even with the power of Excel, one can achieve those analytics. So we really appreciate your presentation. Rhucha, if you can put your mail ID in the chat, that will allow our attendees to ask any questions they have even after the webinar. And in the interest of time, there's one question, Rhucha, which I would like to pose to you. It's from Rajesh. There are a lot of everyone. Rhucha has put her email ID in. Please take note. You're most welcome to communicate with her after this webinar. And she is, as I mentioned, available to guide you, assist you. She's got wonderful academic references also, which you saw in the presentation today. So even if you have any training requirements, she would be available. One question, Rhucha, from Rajesh. Rajesh states, because Rajesh is also a very well-established IT auditor for banks. He said his experience shows that banks do not activate their access logs in SQL Server to review, analytics around access logs. So how should an IT auditor approach the situation where they have not turned on the logs in the SQL Server?
I hope they are talking about the security logs.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, see, if the logs are not there, then it is really difficult to do the further analysis as such. But
Right.
this is the circular that is there. That becomes the first compliance requirement, that the specific logs, if not all, that should be enabled. If not at the operating system level or at database level, at least at the application level, they should be enabled, because generally the database logs and operating system logs tend to become huge. But when you're talking in the light of the circulars that I have just mentioned, maybe the starting point can be the application logs, and application definitely maintains the logs. So the banks are bound to give you that. Talking about the OS and database level logs, since we are restricting ourselves only to the privileged users, they are generally activated and mapped to the SIEM and PAN. If not all the environments, at least for production and TR, they should be enabled. Otherwise, that will become your first observation.
Yes. Great. Rhucha, we really thank you for, having such a wonderful session. I think it was practical. You aligned it to the Reserve Bank master circulars. You brought a lot of practical insights, and it's benefited all of us. It's definitely benefited me. So thank you for being with us today, this evening.
Thank you so much.
And I'm sure you will have questions coming to you, and also interests in terms of professional opinions and guidance from you, and even maybe possible engagement requests coming up to you in the future. So thank you for being with us, and attendees, thank you for being with us every weekend. It's great to have your support, and we look forward to being with you on the coming Wednesday for the 24th of August for yet another insightful session. Request the attendees, if you have any other questions, please put it to Rhucha on her mail ID, and she'll be more than happy to answer. So I wish everyone a great evening ahead and a great day. Rhucha, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Good night.
Please
Good
do
night.
right. I'll try to answer as many queries as possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rhucha. Bye. Thank you.